Everyone, welcome back to On the Fly. Today we're going to look at part 7 of our Gateway to Gold series, the topic being Team Germany today. And the outlook for Germany, obviously they aren't one of the top teams, being Canada, US, Sweden. And I don't see them going terribly far in this Olympic tournament. I think a very attainable goal would be to reach the quarterfinals, and then sort of whatever happens there happens. But with that, I think they are a team that isn't expected to go far, but they definitely do have the potential, obviously drawing from different leagues. One league to take note of is the Deutsche Eishockey Liga, mainly because all these guys play together there already. And I think with the sort of the added chemistry that they already play there will be a big step for the team, not having to worry about chemistry issues. Obviously, with the Olympics, you only get 2 weeks to play. Not a lot of time for training camp and all the other stuff that goes along with it. So I think being able to draw from a league that all these guys already play together in will be a big step for them. So let's take a look right now at the depth chart, starting with the AHL guys with Bach and Reichel, in the Dell League with Nobles, Plachta, Elise, Fulzer, and Wolf. So obviously a lot of Dell guys are going to be a part of this list. Not a lot of NHL guys. Quite a few AHL guys, but in the end, really, they'll be drawing a lot from the Dell League. Moving on to the centers, we have Reeder, Draisaitl. Obviously, Draisaitl will be a big part of the team this year, and I do expect him to hard carry, especially if they want to push to the medal round semifinal. If they can reach the semifinal, I think it'll be a major accomplishment for the country, and really sort of growing the game, I think, is a big step for them. Moving on down the list, we have Sturm, Cahoon, Stutzla. You got Matt Mashik from the KHL. Once again, another league that some of these German guys are going to be drawing from. And then Hager from the Dell. So with the centers, obviously a little bit more deep. I would look for some of these centers to play on their wing side, preferably left wing, right wing kind of thing. But in the end, I think it makes sense for these guys to play on the wing. Obviously, their center depth is pretty good, not in comparison, but pretty good for what they've got. And then their left wingers, right wingers are a little bit weaker, so I would sort of look for them to draw from there, but it still remains to be seen. Moving on to the right wingers, we have JJ Peterka, obviously Buffalo Sabres prospect. You got Kuhnackel in the Swedish Hockey League, Fodor in the Dell, and then you got Fishbush in the Dell as well. Moving on to the defensemen, obviously, once again, it doesn't matter as much whether they play their left side, right side, although it does sort of help them if they're already playing their right side, so they don't have to worry about that in the middle of an Olympic game. They already have enough to worry about playing for their country, playing in front of fans, so it is something to take note of. Not necessarily the most important thing, but still important in the grand scheme of things. So on the left side, I have Mueller, Ugbakil, Wagner, you got Mueller, Krupp, and then all these guys are from the Dell, of course, and then Holzer from the KHL. And on the right side, we have Cedar, Gawanke, you got Boyle, and you got Wisman. Both bottom guys are from the Deutsche Extraliga. So really sort of guys that are going to be filler spots. Not a lot of depth in terms of their defensemen. At least compared to some of the bigger teams, of course. But in the end, I think that will be one part where they really start to struggle, mainly because they don't have necessarily the talent to match up. And in the end, when you got guys like McDavid, you got Crosby, you got all these guys coming down on your wing, you're going to have some solid defensemen to back it up. And that's where I really think the great teams, the Canada, US, Sweden, it sort of separates from these sort of lower teams like the Slovaks, like Latvia, like Germany. And that's sort of where you start to see it, especially with sort of the difference in sort of skill levels, especially through the defense. Moving on to the goalies, we got Grice and Grubauer, both from the NHL. And then you got from the Dell, you got Pielmeyer, Olsteberken, and then you got Tretul from the Deutsche Eishockey Liga. So once again, you got two goalies there from the NHL, proven experience, and then you sort of fall off once you get to the Dell, mainly because once again, top players go to the NHL, and then everybody else sort of falls into that Dell League. So with that, I mean, obviously Germany does have the potential to go far. It just kind of depends on how well they want to gel, especially in their gameplay. I would be curious to see how they match up because obviously a very different game out there in Europe compared to North American games. A little bit more grindy kind of games, puck movements a little bit more. And then if you look at the North American game, obviously a lot more skating's involved, a lot more sort of passing, long stretch stuff. So it is interesting to see kind of the two different gameplays, especially come Olympics, to see which one sort of works better in the end. Typically the North American does. Obviously, as you can see with all these teams sort of embracing that, especially when you look at teams like Sweden, Finland, who are really starting to embrace that side of the game. With all these NHL players coming in, they keep their sort of way they play and they sort of bring it to the Olympic teams. So now take a look at what I think the lines will kind of look like. Obviously, these most likely will change, but I think this will be a pretty solid starting line of Kahun, Draisaitl, and Peterka. So with this line, obviously the big line, a lot of goals are going to be coming from these guys. Their top line, without a doubt. Draisaitl is going to have to kind of carry in a way. Not having McDavid as well, I think, will be a big detriment to his game. I don't see him putting up Edmonton-like numbers, but I think he'll be pretty close. And obviously, without sort of their top guys, I think Germany is sort of going to be Draisaitl. Like that's sort of how it's going to work. It'll be Draisaitl and Grubauer in the end. Obviously, their starting goalie will be Grubauer, but I would be curious to see how well Draisaitl can do because I think in the end it will be come down to sort of what it'll come down to how well Draisaitl can play and how well Grubauer can play, and then everybody else will kind of fall behind that. My second line will be Reichel, you got Stützle, and you got Bach. So with this line, once again, young line, this team's going to be a real young team. So you would look to them to see how they can perform, not necessarily at this Olympics, but the Olympics after that, when they're all sort of in their prime, and I think it will be a really good team in the end, but of course it still remains to be seen. And then the second line, more or less, will be a backup line to the top line. I don't see them scoring a ton of goals, but they definitely do have the firepower to do it. But in the end, I don't see them scoring that much. It's sort of the truth. But with that, we'll move on to the third line. So sort of the old NHL line. So with Kühnhackl, you got Nobles and you got Reeder. So with this line, obviously a little bit of NHL experience with Reeder and Kühnhackl, but not enough to really call them an NHL line. I think this line will sort of be the third line of sorts. I don't see them getting that much ice time because I think the truth is with this team, Draisaitl will get 30 minutes a night. Stützle will get 20 minutes a night. Whether or not they're playing together is a whole different animal, but those two lines are going to be used so much. I don't think it's going to end up being a comparison. But of course, that still remains to be seen. And we'll take a look at the last line now, which I'm going to go with Sturm, Masek, and Hager. So once again, this line, sort of like third line, not a lot of ice time going to be given to these guys. More just when they're getting blown out, they'll throw this line out. Sort of just to say, all right, we'll rest you, Draisaitl. You'll come out the next game and score 8 goals for us. But the truth is, they're not going to use this line a whole ton. They will use it a little bit, of course. You need 4 lines in hockey, obviously, because sometimes you need to rest guys. But in the end, this line won't be used that much. It's sort of the truth. If they want to win, they'll use that top line. If they want to win, they'll use the second line. If they want to win, third line maybe. If they want to win, they probably won't use their fourth line that much. I would look to these guys though, which is why I kind of included them, to be penalty kill guys. I think they will be important Penalty kill guys, obviously Sturm and Mashik will be two guys that are really looking to see how well they can play on the defensive side. And then finally with Hager, sort of being that third kind of penalty kill line. I don't see him getting used that much, but if one of their top defensive killers does go out, I think Hager is a perfect replacement for him. Moving on to the defense, I'm going to go with Holzer and Seider for my first line. So with this line, once again, obviously not the best top pairing in the Olympics, but obviously not the worst. Seider's up and coming, Holzer's up and coming. So I think in the end, it does make quite a bit of sense to put these guys together, young guys, and who will hopefully blossom together as they move up, especially in the years. But once again, it remains to be seen. I think with Germany, they will be a really good team, especially as the years start to kind of progress. There's not a lot of old guys per se on this team, a lot of young kind of prospect guys coming out of the DEL, coming out of the KHL, coming out of the NHL, coming out of the AHL. But in the end, obviously, still remains to be seen how well they can perform. And I think this Olympics is going to be a real telltale sign whether it's going to work or whether they're going to have to try to figure it out and just hope to put out a good team the next year. I hope they get some good kind of up-and-coming prospects, but of course, still remains to be seen. Second line will be Mueller and Boyle. So with this line, once again, sort of the same. They'll be using these guys a little bit, not as much at the top line if they want to win. 30 minutes as well, I believe that for sure. I think these defense guys are going to have to log a lot of minutes. And I think that's sort of what they're going to do, especially with being the younger sort of team, is that they'll rely on the younger guys to put up lots of minutes, sort of use them as they are young. They can recover faster. So I think it will be interesting to see how they want to use it. Obviously, they don't want to abuse it. Hurting guys, putting Draisaitl out for 40 minutes might be a little absurd. But if they want to win, they got to put out guys that they believe can make them win. So especially when you come down to their depth, they don't have a lot of it. So I would be curious to see what they end up doing there. Final line will be Krupp and Gawanke. So with these two guys, once again, not a lot of ice time. It's just kind of how it's been working, is that they don't need a lot of depth for these guys. Rely on your top guys for heavy minutes, and then hope that your bottom guys don't really blow it. So I would be curious to see how Germany does. Finally, obviously, the goalies, to me, are pretty straightforward with Grubauer and Greiss. I'd be curious to see if they do go with the DEL goalie, but in the end, it doesn't make a ton of sense for them to go with them. I think this should be the lineups. Once again, though, not a big pairing, not a terribly top pairing. So it doesn't make a ton of sense to play these guys, and in the end, I could see 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then call it 10 and 10 sort of thing, and then fill up the rest somewhere in here. So with that, obviously, Germany is a team that's going to have to rely on some guys to play a ton of minutes, mainly because their depth is not where it needs to be. And I'd also be interested to see if they end up going with the 7-forward idea, taking out one of these forwards that they're not going to use as much, and then sort of bringing down an extra defenseman just to have them. Obviously, when you're running sort of an interesting team where you're not really looking at their depth, it would be curious to see whether or not they even decide to bring a depth guy on the team. So with that, obviously, quite the team with Germany. And if you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching. If you'd like to drop a like, if you'd like to consider subscribing, tell all your friends about it, leave a comment down below your thoughts on Team Germany. Until next time, see ya.